But I believe that Mel Gibson was honestly trying to portray that deep battle that was going on between heaven and hell as Jesus was on earth, preparing himself to take the next steps towards the cross. In today's message, we want to look at some powerful lessons, and I believe they are powerful lessons about life, and particularly about those times when you and I need to choose between our own desires, our own plans, our own ambitions, our own will, our own comforts, our own pleasures, and God's will, His holy and perfect and good will for our lives. Whether that has to do with how we manage our money, our finances, how we manage our time, what kind of entertainment we include in our lives, how we will serve others, when we will try to seek that balance between service and rest. My will or God's will. And I hope that as we come to the conclusion of this time together this morning, that we will all be clear that by God's grace, we will choose God's will in all of those situations and those choices of life. Now, indeed, it is extremely difficult to understand and relate to the experience Jesus went through in the Garden of Gethsemane. I don't know if you're ready for this morning. It was a big challenge for me to prepare my own heart, my thoughts, my mind, to tackle this event and this experience in the life of Jesus. And so I pray this morning that the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart will be acceptable in the Lord's sight, and that the message that should be given would come through loud and clear from this garden experience in Gethsemane before the intense and indescribable suffering of the trial and the crucifixion. You see, it's a very emotional experience that we're talking about. And I know all of us, whether we're very emotional or not, we've had our own deep emotional experiences in life. Matthew reports about Jesus as he prays in the garden that he began to be sorrowful and troubled. And then Jesus is quoted by Matthew as he says, "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death." It's overwhelmed with this deep, deep grief and sorrow to the point of death. Have you ever been there in that place in your life when you've been so overwhelmed with a troubling situation? Maybe sickness, maybe in the light of the death of a loved one, a tragedy, a very hard time in your life. Jesus is honestly expressing the anguish of his own soul. Luke says it this way in Luke 22:44. And being in anguish, or as it says in the King James, and being in agony, he prayed more earnestly, and his sweat was like great drops of blood falling to the ground. Now, I can't describe physiologically what was happening here, other than just a simple understanding of how deep, to the very depth of his being, this experience was for him as he faced the cross as he faced the trial, as he faced everything that was ahead of him that night. The beating, the scourgings, the mockery, beating him beyond recognition. Jesus, believe me, was thinking about all of these things. And as a human being, and that's the side of Jesus that we find it hard to keep in balance, don't we? The human Jesus and the divine Jesus. The Jesus who is God in the flesh. He's the Son of God. He can turn water into wine. He can walk on the water. He can heal the sick. He can give sight to the blind. But this is the human Jesus that we see, not sinning, but struggling deeply with the Father's will for his life. And so as we think about Jesus in his Gethsemane experience, we say loud and clear that there is a Gethsemane experience for every follower of Jesus. In today's message, we will seek to look at a number of powerful lessons from Gethsemane. I'm sure that if I opened up this time to you to share one of those Gethsemane experiences in your life, that we would have many people standing if you had the courage to share that story with us of a very difficult, a very hard time in your life when you thought that you just couldn't hardly hold on any longer. Everything seemed dark to you and difficult, totally drained of energy, feeling extremely hard-pressed, squeezed, the life and energy being squeezed out of you. Like you can't stand anymore. You can't take it anymore. Tempted to the point of breaking, of giving in, of giving up. How many have ever been there before to that time in your life? Thanks for your honesty. It doesn't surprise me. Maybe through a broken relationship. Maybe through walking through the valley of the shadow of death. Maybe through a promise, through a plan, through something that had been promised to you and you were looking so much forward to it, and then it just all fell to the ground. Well, that's something of the Gethsemane experience of Jesus.